Welcome to the HIT podcast, H.I.T, Human Resources, Insurance, and Technology. I'm your host, Toby Kennedy. As with every week, we are dropping into your feed on Tuesdays with what I hope are awesome, bite-sized, digestible content catered specifically for you, the human resources professional. This week's episode is brought to you by Montage Insurance Solutions, and we pick up live from the stage. We were the keynote speakers opening the general session from the main stage at the big CAHR conference put on by Pyra. Take a look at our three-part series and enjoy.
Hey guys.
Hello.
How's everybody out there doing? I was talking last night at the luau, like Raphael was talking about. I was joking that, the people were like, hey, how you guys doing? And everyone's like, you can do better than that, come on! And you're like, I'm not going to listen to anything you say now I'm annoyed. So I'm grateful that you guys are high energy. We appreciate that. I think that, like Raphael said, we're doing a podcast, we're doing it live. We have a couple of awesome guests. If you're unaware about the HIT podcast, get your phone out. It's the HIT podcast. You got to put in the periods, H period, I period, T period. It stands for Human Resources, Insurance, and Technology. Briefly, we drop every week on Tuesdays. So on Tuesdays, what we do is drop an episode, but they're all 15-ish minutes long, right? So we're not asking you for a couple hours before we get to the point, unlike today's session where I'm dragging before I get to the point. We get bite-sized, digestible content, and it's everything going on in the space of human resources, insurance, and technology. So if you're in this chair, if you're attending this conference, we should be a mandatory follow for you, right? We're only asking for 10, 15 minutes a week, and we bring on lots of amazing folks and speakers, and today is absolutely no exception to that. So wanted to let you guys know a little bit about what the HIT podcast is, and as mentioned, we do have our booth 15. So what we're doing today is we're doing the session here at the General, and then at our booth all day, we're interviewing any brave attendees, any souls out there that want to stop by and sit in the chair, any speakers, come by, sit down, we're all set up. We're going to do interviews all day today, and we're going to cut together a highlight reel of that, kind of a sights and sounds from one other vantage point, right? From the angle of the podcast that's on the ground, that's capturing the CAHR 2024. That's what we're doing at our booth, so please come by, let us ask you a couple questions, give to your fellow HR practitioners, give of your knowledge, sit in the chair, and let's see what we can cut together as a highlight reel. Deal? Yeah. God bless. All right, here we go. So, I want to chat with you guys, and today's presentation is kind of being billed as a past, present, and future of benefits and compensation, and with that in mind, I was recently at a conference, and the speaker was talking about how we have multiple kind of generations in the workforce, right? And that's not necessarily an overly novel concept, but what we kind of sat in the pocket of during that presentation was the idea that, folks in their early career, helping build them up, helping bring them up. Folks in maybe the middle stage of their career, looking for spots of advancement, right? Us as employers needing to be aware that there's different sort of folks on the arc of their career. And then we talked a lot about people that are maybe towards the tail of their career. A lot of knowledge, maybe even a lot of institutional knowledge about your organization, and how do we get that from these folks and into the rest of our workforce so it doesn't walk out the door with their retirement, right? So long frame, long story short, what I want to start with today is in honor of the past, right? And sort of looking back in institutional knowledge, and specifically your guys' past and experiences. So, Catherine, I'll start with you if you don't mind. When I kind of frame this up and talk about the past of benefits and compensation, what are some of the key things that if you were transferring your knowledge and information to the folks here, you'd want to make sure, those that came before, that experience, that you would like to talk to folks about?
Thank you, Toby.
Yeah.
Thanks. Happy to be here today and join you all. So my experience in seeing the past and maybe things that perhaps did not work as well in some fashion would be over the years, there's been these moments that have really created inflection points at least in the US, as far as what has prompted change in the benefit and compensation landscape. And what immediately comes to mind is like perquisites, right? Like perquisites were something like company cars and additional health insurance, life insurance, all these other things that executives got. And obviously through the years, there's been a focus on removing those types of things and leveling the playing field between executives and colleagues, or employees rather. We say colleagues internally, so which I think is one. I think pension plans are one that's really interesting too, right? Pension plans were a thing of the past. Some of them still exist. A lot of companies have clearly moved away for various reasons, affordability and whatnot. But I also think it's really interesting in this new market in bringing back defined DB plans and things like that, and how it's changed. So I think there's a number of things that I've seen over the years. HMO plans.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
HMO plans were kind of a big thing. They're still there, but they're less of a big thing.
Sure.
How could we do them differently?
Yeah.
So there's a lot in there.
Yeah, and when you talked about kind of how you guys describe employees or colleagues or whatever, it reminded me that I skipped your introduction.
Yeah, oh, that's okay.
Tell me a little bit about how you got in the chair, where you're at, why you might refer to your folks as one thing or another, what organization you're with, et cetera.
So I'm Catherine Wragg. I'm the Chief People Officer of TriNet. TriNet is an HR services or an HR solutions group that provides solutions to the SMB, so the small and medium-sized businesses, through a vertical strategy, essentially. We offer PEO solutions, we offer HRIS solutions, and I've been with the organization for about 7.5 years. Prior to that, I was with, and to your point on colleagues versus employees, because of a PEO, it's a professional employment organization, which means it's a co-employment model that we offer for many of our customers. And we call our customers employees or worksite employees. We call our internal folks colleagues, so we can differentiate between the two.
Right.
So that's my trip up there.
Yeah.
And prior to that, I was a few years with Giorgio Armani Corporation, and then I actually spent, similar to you, almost 20 years in the property casualty insurance space.
Yeah. That's awesome. Thank you.
So I just dated myself too.
Yeah, no, I was just about to say, like, yeah, I mean,
so it's that generational conversation.
Yeah, nice. So Jen, I'll ask you the same question with respect to movements and moments that have shaped kind of how we got where we are from a benefits and comm standpoint. But if you don't mind, if you could start off with your intro as well.
Yeah, perfect. Hi, everyone. I'm Jenn Verma, SVP of HR at Lionsgate Entertainment. Lionsgate is a film and TV company, best known for things like John Wick, Hunger Games, Weeds, Extended Family, Ghosts, etc. I started my career actually at Towers Perrin. Out of college, I knew I was strong in math, and I heard actuaries made a lot of money. Luckily for me, Towers had two different career tracks. They had the actuarial, and then they had the benefits consulting. So I quickly detoured to the consulting side and just fell in love with creating different benefit programs and designs for the various clients that I serviced. I really wanted to see the true impact after some of those things went in place, so I decided to go on the employer side. That's when I transitioned to Lionsgate Entertainment. And I've been there over 13 years now. I've grown and developed from a benefits analyst to now I mentioned I'm SVP of HR, oversee not just employee benefits, but also learning and organizational development, employee engagement, and really the whole total rewards structure and strategy. And to your point about when I look at the past, especially with my career, two moments, or bigger than moments, really that stick out for me are healthcare reform. When I started my career, that's when we were rolling out Affordable Care Act. We were learning a bunch of new terms and acronyms, ACA, exchanges, all of that. It definitely changed benefits at that time.
Can you believe how that was March 23rd, 2010?
I know.
Isn't that outrageous?
I know. It seems like so far away, but a lot of the things in that time, still exist today. such as not being able to discriminate, to be able to get healthcare coverage, the removal of the pre-existing conditions, which I think is great, as well as dependents still being able to be on their parents' insurance up to age 26.
Yep.
So those were some things that really impacted benefits then. And then more recently, obviously the COVID-19 pandemic, that accelerated benefits related to work from home, flexibility, mental health, and wellness initiatives as well.
Yeah, that's interesting. So do you mind unpacking a little bit about kind of the work from home stuff? Because I think that it's a big topic, and I know I don't want to say it's been done to death, but there's been a lot of dialogue about it. I had an episode on my podcast, actually, but where one of the guys was talking about how, prior to the pandemic, a lot of organizations, the answer was 0%, right?
Yep.
And then during the height, for a lot of organizations, obviously there's essential businesses, et cetera, the answer turned into 100. Right, and neither of those might be the right, but where you land in the middle and how you maybe break it up departmentally or 1 day a week, 2 days a week, just curious about if you guys are still tinkering with the alchemy a little bit and trying to figure things out, and maybe your take on that just briefly?
Yeah, no, a great question, and listen to, I think it was episode 40 of his
God bless, there you go.
I did listen to it. It was really good, and Bill did a great job explaining it. It's complicated, right? Employees, well, even before the pandemic, we were piloting at Lionsgate a work from home option just to help with flexibility with caregiving needs and whatnot. And then flash forward, we're all forced to work from home. Since we've come back to the office, Lionsgate has a 4-day in-office work week, so Monday through Thursday, and then to kind of add that flexibility, we have a Friday is our work from home half day. So we used to have summer Fridays, now it's year-round, so you have some flexibility there. There's a lot of advantages to having hybrid or more remote positions from the recruiting perspective, employee satisfaction, productivity, which I know can be argued, but still there are a lot of research in that area. And then on the flip side, it's a very different way to manage. It's really difficult to manage hybrid. I think it's easier to do fully remote or all in office. That hybrid, you really have to change from change to an outcomes-focused management style. And for a lot of people, it's hard to do. And I think each company, each team really has to see what works best for them. So for us, collaboration and that organic growth, especially for early careers, just overhearing conversations and having that on-the-job training is so critical, which is why we've kind of landed at that now. But we're still trying to see if that's the sweet spot.
Yeah, interesting. Same question, if you don't mind unpacking.
Yeah. No, not at all. TriNet was basically almost 100% in office prior to the pandemic. Now we're probably 98%
in
remote.
Office. Oh,
no,
wow.
we're the opposite. at the
180.
moment.
Well, 179.
Yeah, exactly. And but it is a topic of conversation because essentially we had built a come back to work program, and then obviously there was a lot of push and pull with regard to the flexibility, discussion for colleagues and what are they getting out of it and all the rest of it. So yeah, we are remote, but we are working through sort of what are those new centers of gravity going to be. So to your point on early in career aspects, what we are finding is a lot of our folks do want those touch points, right? So we're getting together.
The physical in-person
Yeah,
touch
absolutely.
Points, yeah.
They want it, but on a more deliberate. They don't want to sit at their computer and work remotely on a screen. What they want is the connection and the collaboration, and that, I walk down the hall and I can get something done quicker, but it has to be more designed, more deliberate and whatnot. So we're working through something that'll create centers of gravity, but for us, going remote has actually incredibly helped our diversity numbers. Because we're now in 48 states in DC, and it allows us to really be stronger in our hiring practices in that way. So when we go back to kind of where are those centers of gravity going to be, we're doing the work right now to really redefine where do we want to be in those communities and create more of a sense of being both internally and externally, so we can bring in early in career talent, we can create programs that people can learn from one another, but it'll never, in my opinion, it'll never be 5 days a week in the traditional sense, and we'll never flip a switch. We'll build something that over the next 5 years, we'll work on it, because I think what we've seen other companies do in that space is not really successful.
Yeah, and I don't mean to put words in either of you guys' mouth, but I feel like what I'm hearing is A, we're still tinkering a little bit, and B, there's not really a one size fits all. You're sort of answering, couching it as for my organization, and same with you guys, where if maybe you were plugged somewhere else, you'd have to reevaluate and you have to kind of get after it.
It's not a one size fits all.
So I think I'm wading into the present. I'm just so excited to talk to you guys, but getting us back to our touchstone of the current segment on the past. Sometimes we can do these like business archaeological digs through history, and we can kind of rediscover things that were really common in yesteryear, that if you dusted them off and maybe fluffed them up a little bit, can be repurposed today and maybe make us competitive or be a little different. Is there any ideas from the past that you've seen us get away from that you think, if you had a magic wand, you'd like us to get back towards too? And I'll start with Jenn.
Yeah, a really great question.
The podcast is full of them.
I mean, the one thing, and actually you talked about it earlier, is from an employee perspective, pensions. I know that sounds crazy.
You want to get back to that?
Even this past week, I read an article from the New York Times asking, are 401ks a mistake?
Yeah.
Right? So I think it's tricky because at least that was more of a guaranteed benefit for employees for retirement. Nowadays, we're hoping people are saving money in their 401k. We're hoping companies are able to do a match, and at least they're getting that match. But a lot of them aren't. So from an employee perspective, I would say that. From an employer, obviously, it's a financial part of it that can be tricky. But I think that would be interesting to kind of rethink what that looks like.
That's fascinating.
Well, I think to that point, I think, folks, the average tenure of employees these days is much shorter than it was, at least when I started. And sometimes I think things like that or a reimagined version of it can help with the longevity and actually really rewarding folks for staying.
I think that what I perceived is that it gave employees more of a sense of connection to an organization, whereas today when you hear employees talk, it is transactional, baby. Like they're like, I mean nothing to you and you mean nothing to me, and if I get another offer, I'm out. Right? And so it's interesting to hear you talk about pensions maybe being a way to re-bridge that gap, especially with younger folk coming up where they're just, they don't feel the same level of 40-year commitment that yesterday had.
Yeah.
Cool. So how about we take the inverse approach to that, right? So other than the obvious strides towards equality, which are awesome and we're still doing, is there anything from the past that you think should stay in the past, right? Stuff that we did from a benefits and comp standpoint that we've migrated away from. And if you could just give your 2 cents to the audience, folks, like keep that migration away. Don't bother circling back to that. Start with Catherine.
I think DB plans fit in that category too, right? It's like both the positive and the negative on,
DB meaning defined benefits?
Yeah, because they just become too cost prohibitive for many organizations or most organizations. So I think it's either reimagine them or they completely stay in the past. I think HMOs are, at least for me, an interesting topic, and either you reimagine them or the same thing is, I don't know that they solved, and obviously a lot of companies have moved away from them in a way because they weren't necessarily helping on a preventative basis. They weren't necessarily proactive, and they were very structured, right? And so I think that there's maybe something there, because I think the way health has migrated in more preventative, more I want to be part of your life and integrated and preventative. Do you feel different?
I
You sell them?
We consult with clients on the best and most appropriate healthcare possible. But I'm curious, when you say that, are you Southern California based? Are you saying that with a Southern California slant? And the only reason I bring that up is I think the national trend, you're right. We've got a lot of those fee for service. And then once you get in the PPO world, we get creative, right? 4, 5, 7 years ago, RBP, reference-based pricing plans were all the rage, and hospitals are kicking those out and putting members in a tough spot now. You've got all the MERP in the fully insured world, the level funding, the self-funding, the whole 9 yards. And we'll get into disappearing deductibles and steerage and all that. But in the market, specifically in Southern California, where even like the CAHRs, for example, of the world do have a pretty strong foothold, I would wonder if people in the audience don't hear you going, we're moving away from HMOs. Like
CAHRs I think more nationally, we're very distributed. So we're based in Northern California. We definitely have CAHR as a plan. But we have
like
the
different
majority
CAHR, you know what I mean? You have NorCal CAHR.
For sure. Yeah, there is a difference. It's funny when I was looking at like the groups and I was like, wait, but there's nobody in North California.
Yeah, you get people on the border. They're like, I'm in Bakersfield, so I'm gonna put my 1 foot here. And my claims are half an hour. Yeah,
for sure. And then I think on the other side, on the compensation side, is just all the ancillary. I think compensation has gotten more streamlined, right? It's just gotten a lot more straightforward, and in particular, we can talk about equality and parity and all of that, but I think that's been a really positive development for employees on the whole.
Jen, can you bring us home on our segment in the past with something that you have seen from the past that's in the past that you would recommend? Why don't you go ahead and leave it in the past?
What comes to mind for me is the pre-existing condition restrictions, and then probably more of like the one-size-fits-all benefit approach, because we know that our workforce is diverse. People have different needs, different interests too, and just trying to be able to address those. With the one-size-fits-all, it doesn't work for everybody, and we know that. So I'm glad that we're slowly moving from that. I know there's still some things that we still try to do it, but it doesn't quite work.
I think, and I don't want to be rude about it, but like that's kind of like that's the lazy way these days, right? Well, because it takes a lot of thought, a lot of effort, a lot of sitting around the table, a lot of analysis, a lot of data. If you want to get specific, right? If you want to buy an off-the-shelf thing, that's fine. But if you want it to be more bespoke, you got to figure out the points at which you're tailoring, how many, and how you're doing it. Great answer. Thank you, both of you.
That's all the time we have for you this week on the HIT Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us for our 3-part series live from the stage at the big CAHR conference. This week's episode was brought to you by Montage Insurance Solutions and TrueHue. And we thank you guys for joining us this week. Join us this week, join us next week, join us every week. And until next week, make this the best week yet.
There seems to be a suspicious